We are now live. All right. Let's see what I have to say.
Make your head bigger, Georgia. Do it. Make your head bigger.
I want to match everyone else's head size.
Zoom in.
Maybe we all have big heads.
Wait, now I got to tilt down. I got to tilt down now.
I like that your camera has controls like that.
I know, but this camera sometimes just dies on me. It blurs in and out,
Right
and then
before the show, she was like, "Name a system, a military target," and I was like, "No, Dantooine, fine, Dantooine."
Well, that's not a big enough military target. We're still going to blow up your planet.
Not too trusting. Dantooine is too remote to make it an effective demonstration.
I'm so sad about Bilbo Baggins today.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know. I haven't been on Twitter. You guys are
Bilbo
like,
Baggins passed away.
Yeah, Ian Holm died.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Aww.
88.
He went to the no. He did not die. He went to the West, Joe.
That's true.
Yeah.
Ian Holm went to the West.
Oh. Well, R.I.P. for him. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
All right. We're ready. Good afternoon. Today is Friday, June 19th, 2020. And today we are going to talk all about our hopes and dreams for WWDC because this is the iMore show. And first off, joining us today on the iMore show is our expert therapist, Georgia Dow. Welcome to the show.
So I'm going to say it. What's up, Renee? He didn't tell me he's going to be on. Lori's like, we have a special guest. And I just spoken to Renee and you did not tell me. This was a complete surprise. I'm very excited to have Renee on.
Oh, please. You were going to hard quit, not show up, right? You were like, what?
You're saying that's why Lori that's why Lori didn't tell me, because I might have jumped out. No, that is not the case. I'm very excited. I'm sorry. I introduced Renee.
Can't have them on the same screen.
I took Lori's job a little bit. I was just so excited. So, yay.
And in case you were confused, she's talking about our very special guest today, Rene Ritchie. Welcome back to the show, Rene.
Oh, it's like coming home every time. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So when George, when I told everybody that we were having a special guest, guess who it is? And Georgia said, "Well, it's not Rene because he would have told me." I thought, uh-oh.
I spoke to you before I spoke to Lori.
It was
I spoke to you. You went to work.
Lies.
Lori
I bet you already knew. No, it was right after I think you were holding it from. Oh, I did have to rush. I did have to rush in between, but then it was that awkward silence in the chat. No one said anything. Joe's like, I'm not handling this. I'm just staying out of it.
Joe's like, I'm the special guest every week.
Very special. Speaking of very special guest, Joe Keller, assistant managing editor of iMore. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here as always. Welcome back.
And I am Lori Gill. See, I'm remembering now to say my own name, so we're getting better at this. So before we talk about our love and joy and all things WWDC that I'm very excited about, I do feel like we have to kind of make a quick mention of the elephant in Apple's conference right now, which is the 30% Apple tax is what some people are calling it, the fee that Apple takes from developers for housing their apps in the App Store. I wanted to just kind of talk about it because it's a big deal right now. It's up in the air for developers, and we don't want to just pretend like they're not going through some issues. Not all developers are on this or are affected by this issue, but it had to do with HeyMail, which is a brand new mail app that's just barely
I don't want to interrupt you, but can we just all agree that it's pronounced hey?
Hey.
We cannot.
Hey, man.
Absolutely not. No,
Which
I sound so uncool if I tried to do that. I wouldn't have sounded like either of you. It would end up very poor, so I'm not even going to try it.
You have to. That's the rule.
No, I don't want to embarrass everyone. They'll be like,
I want to embarrass myself like that. No.
The issue that's come up is that Basecamp, the creators of HeyMail, tweeted out that Apple had rejected an update to their app because it did not include the option to subscribe to their mail service from within the app. And Renee, I would love to get a little bit of insight from you because you're really good at understanding the balance of developer needs and Apple's needs. So this has been going on for a long time. Hey Mail is not the only app that's had this experience. There's been a lot of times where developers have felt frustrated with this particular fee. So give me Apple's perspective, what you think is the reason why Apple is really digging in their heels on Haymail and saying, this is our policy and we're not changing it.
Well, so I think there's two actual issues. And like, just to answer that part simply, it's that DHH is a huge, like DHH is a billionaire. Well, I don't know if he's a billionaire, he's a multi-millionaire. He races Lamborghinis. So, but he's also really, really good at stirring up controversy on the internet as a way to get what he wants. And he's completely transparent about that. He has a document on his website that says the Basecamp method is to create an enemy and then to leverage that enemy to become successful. And it really works for him. Like, he's done it numerous times. He gets a lot of attention. He's very outraged. But his needs are often very much more about DHH than they are about the larger community, though the larger community can benefit. So like, he's a controversial figure. And
Absolutely.
Apple in no way is going to give in to DHH. They will take any amount of fire right now to not make it look like DHH is winning. And then maybe like a week from now or a month from now, they might go, oh, we were planning to do this all along, but it's for everybody, not just you, DHH. So suck it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Do they end with the so suck it? Is that what you're, that's an official?
well, it'll be like, thank you so much for being on the App Store.
Okay.
That'll be translated.
The
as so suck it.
undertones were.
But I mean, the larger issue is that the App Store was created at a time and place where most people still bought software, where software was often expensive. There was very little of it. It was sold in boxes for a lot of money. People bought very, very limited amounts of software. Like the Photoshop package was $1,000. Final Cut Pro was $1,000. And you had to, like, Office was hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You had to plan for it. You didn't upgrade all the time. You upgraded selectively when you could afford it. And even mobile apps like my Palm Trio, my yellow sticky notes app cost $65 for the Palm Trio, and it crashed all the time. And you had to go to the web store that you bought it from, and they probably didn't care about you. And they took like 50 or 60% of the revenue from that app. So when the App Store first came out, like, you can go back and look at the comments. Developers were super excited because it was a way to get their apps in front of all these customers. Apple would handle not only the transactions, but people forget they also handle international taxes. So like the tax, like, you don't have to worry about taxes in Japan or in Finland or, you know, anywhere. Apple does all of that. So they provided this service and developers were really happy. But over time, things change. And now it's, 10 years, 12 years later, and apps have become content the way that music has and TV has. Like, we used to pay tons of money for a CD, and there were companies that made all their money off printing and shipping CDs. And we pay like $15 a month for Netflix. We don't buy like DVDs of every TV show anymore. And a lot of books have basically not allowed that to happen, but they're one of the very few. News, the business that we're all in, is worthless. Like, it's for free on the internet. You can't make money selling news. There's a couple of companies that still sell news, but it's like either porn or financial news. That's the only things that people will pay for. So like the whole, and
barely that.
Totally. And apps have become content. They're no longer scarce. They're ubiquitous. People blame Apple for the prices being low, but really that's volume. It's like, if there's one calculator app, people are going to pay $100 for it. If there's 30 calculator apps, no one can support, like, no one's going to buy more than one of them. So there's a lot of these factors. And the other huge one is that people stopped buying apps, and not like some people just because they're expensive and the prices went down, but also companies like Google and Facebook started giving away really functional apps for free. Venture capitalists gave away apps to grow user bases. So apps became, I don't want to say worthless, but the value changed for consumers to where you could get really, really good apps for free. And it's very hard for developers in scale, indie developers in scale, to compete with that. And the third big trend was in-app purchases and software as services. So before, Apple would take like 30% of the money from your app, but apps are all mostly free now. And all the money is made off, like, you subscribe to Netflix, or you subscribe to Haymail, or you buy a Tesla and you get the Tesla. You subscribe to Tesla and you get the Tesla app. So Apple's 30% cut, the amount of apps are up. The 30% cut they're getting is low, except for in-app purchases on gaming, which is billions and billions of dollars and basically sustaining the entire App Store ecosystem. So my guess is Apple's like, well, everyone's taking their money outside the App Store. We're going to make sure that the 30% applies to all these developers taking it outside of the App Store. because Apple promised they would double services revenue over the next couple of years. And a big part of services revenue is App Store. And if that's shrinking, it's much harder to double it, which is what Wall Street cares about. And now we've gotten to a point with the pandemic and protests and everything where in prosperous times, everyone just wants to make a bigger pie. But in painful times, everyone's like, I want part of your slice of that pie. I'm hungry. And that's where we are now, where Apple is squeezing certain companies to get the 30% that they believe they're entitled to for everything they provide as a value proposition on the App Store. And developers are like, I am dying over here. Damn, if you're going to get like, no, you're not even going to get that. I want to give you 2% if I feel like it. And we're sort of caught in between. And I don't know if the customers are really being considered that much in this whole battle.
No,
Sorry,
but
rant.
like also like yeah, it was great though. You really did explain it.
It was a good rant.
It was a very informative rant. Mine are just rants. Yours were informative. But I think that Apple can afford it versus developers that can't. And I think that that's where it comes down to it, is it ends up with a lot of angry developers that truly have no power in this. What are they going to do? Pull their app from the App Store? And who's that going to hurt? Apple's going to be fine. So they are kind of powerless into this. That's why people talk about unions, to give power to the small little tiny people. We won't get into that. That's a hot topic. But, you know, they feel like Apple's taking too big of a piece of the pie compared to how much pie Apple's already eaten, right? And I like apple pie, but, you know, Apple's plump with its pie. Give a little bit back. And I think that the developers would just be happy. And I don't think it would hurt Apple. Again, yes, you know, I get it. Profits over people, but, you know, give up some pie.
And there's also, you know, Rene points out that, you know, this 30% is not just Apple, just like you made a bunch of stuff and I get 30% of it. This is like Apple is providing a service to developers. And instead of charging developers thousands of dollars a year for, you know, like you just pay me $1,000 a year, whether you make money on the App Store or not, they're saying, we're going to work with you so that if you don't make very much money, we're not going to take very much money. And if you make a lot of money, we're going to take a lot of money. And it's 30% one way or another. So like I'm in the middle on this because I understand, like, as a business, this is what Apple should be doing, is, you know, charging for the work that they do, which is providing the App Store, like Rene says, providing the financial services to help these apps, these developers kind of get the money from the apps and international fees and things like that. But what I'm also seeing right now is a sentiment across a lot of developers, and Alex Lindsay would argue that it's not a lot of developers, it's just a few loud ones. So I might be wrong on the percentage of app developers that feel this way, but the sentiment I'm hearing is that maybe it's time for Apple to reevaluate how they charge and when they charge and for how long and all these things that kind of go into it. For example, you know, just like Rene is saying, that now that so many things are going to subscription, Apple loses out on the opportunity to make revenue off of those apps that are downloaded for free. If I put an app in an app store and I don't pay to put it in the App Store, and people can use my app and they don't have to pay to use the app, and they pay me a subscription and I get it all for free, but Apple has done its work, it's unfair, not just to the work that Apple puts into it, but also other app developers who have an app that costs money to download in the App Store. Why would, you know, Fantastical, I think they actually are free to download. Let's not use that one.
They just switched to subscription.
Yeah, they just switched to subscription. Why would one app have to pay 30% because they have an upfront cost in the App Store, but another app get all of Apple's services, all of the same, you know, great things that Apple is doing in the App Store for free, and never have to pay Apple for it? That seems unbalanced.
There's a huge thing, like with some people say Apple gets $100 per developer for the developer fees, and times tens of millions of developers, that's a lot of money. Other people say yes, but Apple's also giving you Xcode and all these developer tools, and they're maintaining all this, so they're providing value for that. And the one that kills me though is that so different people have offered different solutions. Ben Thompson's is that Apple should just allow external payment processes. So like you should be able to you should be able to pull up the thing and you charge people any way you want. And if the App Store is a better experience, people will choose that and Apple will make money, but it will be based not on control, but on actually competing on quality.
Mhm.
A lot of some people though are like, we want side loading, and we like it basically lists off everything they want that would turn the App Store into the Google Play Store. But then they're like, but the Google Play Store is trash, so we don't want that.
Yeah,
You have to
right,
like you have to balance like the
right.
repercussions for what you want and create like my preference would be figure out the ideal app store for you and then work backwards to what would achieve that. Not like don't just throw out a bunch of random things that might take the app store away from you, and then you won't be happy because you're already not happy with the Google Play Store.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know why they don't just do the same thing as we do with taxes, that you pay a percentage depending on how successful your app is.
That's
Apple
another
knows
suggestion,
how
progressive scale.
Apple already knows how successful your app is because they're that middle person that are doing all of this. And so when you start out and you don't make a lot, you're not paying a lot. And then as you become more profitable, then you give to daddy a certain amount of that
But it's the
money.
same as real life. The billionaire companies go, well, then there should be a cutoff. After so much money, we shouldn't have to pay anymore.
Well, it's not even...
Again, it could be maxed, right? That's fine. That's usually the way it goes. It's not like, until it's going to be 80 or 90% of the profits and the big companies are paying all of that money towards it. But it could be capped at a, 35% or something that kind of makes a little bit of a difference for the people that are beginning and are really struggling to succeed. It would, again, I think that Apple they wouldn't lose a ton because the apps are not making a lot of money in the first place. Certain apps are not making a lot of money in the first place, but it would be more fair. It would be easier. And once you start and you become successful, then you don't have to really worry as much about it. It would give a lot of goodwill. I think it would be Apple giving back where they can. I think that a lot of people are very angry at these billion, trillion, companies taking all of the profit, and like little people are struggling. And so I think that would catch them at the other side of the wave where there's going to be a lot of anger as people are more and more aware at the disparity.
One of the things Ruben Flores says in the store is price services at $129 in the App Store and less outside. And that's actually Phil Schiller or somebody in the App Store sent out a letter yesterday offering, hey, a bunch of remedies, including make it a usable email client that then when you subscribe, you get more services, or charge more in the App Store because you're doing revenue share than outside the App Store. And that's become a whole like separate line of either rage or
and only I would say because those are sort of band-aids,
right? Like
to...
the biggest problem is that Apple is completely inconsistent. And Georgia taught me a long time ago that inconsistency creates learned helplessness, and nobody enjoys living in that state.
Joe?
Yeah, I don't have any particular thoughts.
I thought you were going to say something.
We cut you off and you lost your thought is really probably.
Yeah,
you wanted his turn to say,
over there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean I think that's what we're facing right now. What we're looking at right now is that I think my hope is that Apple is seeing that there's a lot of feedback from developers saying we don't like what's happening now. So my hope is that Apple is saying, okay, let's go back to the drawing board behind closed doors and let's see how we can, keep our business going, but allow others to feel like they're doing good. And Georgia, your point of, Google's makes a hell of a lot of money. They could make some financial compromises to and not lose their shirts over it. I think they just recently announced that the App Store made $500 million billion, not million,
yeah,
billion.
So not that they made,
but
that they facilitated. So they're claiming credit for a huge amount of commerce that, some people argue may or may not be completely them, but they're saying that the tools that they've created have allowed this business to exist.
Yeah, but my point to that is that the App Store is clearly a lucrative organization across the board for all people, for developers and for Apple. So, I think it's time. I think that a lot of voices are kind of being a little bit louder about can we please reevaluate? You gave us this App Store with 30% back when the App Store was tiny and the only other option was buying boxed software for $1,000. That was more than 10 years ago. Can we please reevaluate this and see if there's a different way we can go about it now?
Yeah.
The one thing that's the same, what I noted, I tried to retweet absolutely as many different opinions as I could because people had so many different opinions from completely Apple side to completely DHH side and everything in between. And the one commonality is the lack of consistency. The one thing that upset everybody, like regardless of whether you think Apple is justified to take that much, whether you think it should not be taking anything at all, whether you think there should be side loading or no side loading, like no matter what, everyone thought that it should be consistent. I think that's the big lesson Apple needs to learn here, is that they do it so that they can cover their butts, so that if something unforeseen happens, there's no precedent that they have to be beholden to. So for them, it's like a safety net, but for everyone else, it just makes them terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what worries, and this is something that worries me, and this is a worry I've seen echoed by like Steve Troughton-Smith, is that if Apple doesn't change, tactics, change the App Store in some meaningful way, they're going to be regulated. The App Store is going to be regulated out of existence.
Yeah.
And we're going to lose a lot of the benefits that come with it. Like, like there is built-in security to software downloads on iOS. And, if the App Store goes away, there's a certain level that probably goes away too.
Right.
And
or it changes drastically anyway.
And I think, Joe, that would be like the one thing that, like, I don't know if Apple, and I think that they care about developers and they need them, but, regulation is that real big, scary word that even the largest companies, Apple, Amazon, Google, they start to make changes like breaking up their companies so that they are not a monopoly. Like they'll do things because regulation is death to a company. So, that might be the one thing that makes Apple think twice about the manner in that we're doing it, so that there's a little bit more of equity, because as Rene was stating, when there's, when people feel that there's not an equity situation, they're become really frustrated and angry. Even though they're getting something, they'll kind of spite their nose to their face anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, I'd like to see, they do it on the Mac already, but introduce a version of Gatekeeper on iOS. I'd be very curious to see what that looks like. We don't want to throw out a billion ideas without any idea of how they'd be implemented. But I think some version of side loading is maybe, if not in the near future, in the medium to long term. And with, Apple signs apps, even if they don't go through the Mac App Store, to verify that this app is okay to run on your Mac. And you can disable Gatekeeper to run untrusted software anyway. And, I think that system coming to iOS could theoretically alleviate some of these issues.
I think that also could potentially be a frightening experience, knowing that, if we, for example, as, Apple bloggers, say, hey, check out this really great app that you can get for your iPhone, but it's not in the App Store. You have to disable Gatekeeper to install it. And, people who aren't very tech savvy, they go, oh, you can do that? Okay, well, I'll get this one because because iMore recommended it. And then they go, oh, look, here's this other one. And now that I know that I can actually disable Gatekeeper and download any app anywhere, I'm going to download that one too. And then, oh no, now I have a bug and a virus, and it could potentially be very dangerous.
The other thing is governments using it to backdoor iOS the way they can, Mac OS, and people don't want backdoors on their phones.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's without risk. I actually think the biggest risk is probably people's, let's say, tech-savvy children saying, "Oh no, just disable Gatekeeper here. No, this app's really cool, but you need to disable Gatekeeper here."
No, they're just going to want cracked apps. I mean, like when you see a certain type of person saying we want to side load, it's because they just want free games, and games are free anyway. It doesn't even make any sense to me anymore.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just that, somebody wants to download some emulator that lets them play games for free or watch movies for free or something like that. It's true. So let's get off this and talk about the stuff we came to talk about, which is Dub. Starting on Monday, keynote at 10 a.m. my time and 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're all going to be sitting with our cups of coffee and our snacks, ready to find out all about the software and possibly the hardware coming to our near future. So Joe, let's
Lori
get
just
it
wants the over-the-ear
started.
headphones. I can tell already. I'm just looking in her eyes, and I can see she wants them.
I do. Really. I keep saying maybe they'll be hardware because that's the thing that I am most.
So
Even
that's
though
the
I'm
hardware
excited
you
about Apple tags, I am excited about over-the-ear headphones.
over the ear.
Joe,
know,
give
I know.
us some fun things that we can expect from iPad OS.
So iPad OS.
Or not for sure. Remember, we don't know
Yes.
yet. So these
We
are
don't know.
these are
Bunch
speculations.
of rumors. Who's even really sure? What will there even be a new version of iPad OS? Yes, there will probably be a new version of iPad OS. Well, iPad OS is kind of a big mystery for a lot of us who really follow the iPad this year, because usually how Apple does it is they'll release a big update to the iPad, and then they'll wait 2 years, and then they'll release another big update to the iPad, and it's just this kind of like stop and start. And so hopefully, I'd like to see, a more consistent sort of update path, if you will, for the iPad. And I think this year we might get some of that stuff. I mean, Pencil is, Apple Pencil is supposed to be getting some interesting new features. I think Markup, we've talked about this before, but Markup in Safari. I don't know exactly what that's supposed to look like. I think Georgia and I have a dream of the overhead projector sheet.
Yeah.
that lands on Safari and you can just draw over it. Yeah. So that there's rumors of maybe some more keyboard stuff coming in. Maybe, I don't know about trackpad and mouse. I'd like to see some trackpad and mouse updates, like, slide over gestures, or edge gestures I've talked about before on the trackpad. Like there are, like, you can swipe over from the edge on a Mac to activate Notification Center. Well, what if you could do that to bring in slide over apps? That, that's my particular dream. But yeah, there's maybe some keyboard functions coming. The Magic keyboard doesn't have a function row, as many people have lamented. So the rumor is that Apple is working on, sort of a keyboard shortcut replacement of that, where you hit Command or Control or whatever, and then I would guess, hit a number. I'm guessing they have these in the numbers. Yeah. We don't know a lot.
Right. Yeah. Which is actually like good for Apple. They've been pretty good about keeping things a secret. So
and I think part of that's helped by, oddly enough, part of that's helped by the virus, because, they're not all together. And also we don't know, there's some things we heard about, like iOS at the beginning of the year, going into February. But now that we've had this whole coronavirus pandemic, we don't know, what Apple's working on presently. Like the rumor of on iPhone and iPad widgets on the home screen. Bloomberg reported that early part of the year. Is that still happening?
I think they also, like, the big disruptor was that everyone was so excited for cursor and trackpad support, and Apple just dumped that casual into 13.4. They're like, oh, you thought this was for 14. You were waiting. You thought this was going to be the big thing this year. Well, how about we drop it now?
Yeah, it's that sort of,
like us now.
Back in iOS 13, when they released that in iOS and iPad OS 13, that's sort of that in the sort of early accessibility form that it was. It's sort of one of those features, like, okay, so they'll take this next year and they'll make it, better and a little more mainstream and that sort of thing.
And there were articles about it, right? Like, people were saying, like, huge rumor, we discovered this in the code. It's coming in iOS 14.
And they're like, surprise, suckers. It's rumor here now. Yeah, they didn't want to make us wait, 6 more months for that.
Yeah. Georgia, what do you like? I always have a little bit of fun with the naming schemes. So before we talk about the other weird thing that might be the case, what do you think Mac OS is going to be called this year? We've been on islands right now with Catalina. We previously had mountains with Mojave and Sierra and High Sierra, and then the big cats were before that. where are we going? Are we going to go islands? Or do you think we might see something more relating to Catalina? Or are we leaving California entirely? What do you think?
I would love if it's something more worldwide. I think that it's time. I think that it's the place for that. I'll just say that naming scheme, like I don't remember what I'm on at any point in time. Like I'm dyslexic. Like I don't know. I'm gonna have to look it up. I have no clue. So like I'd probably be the worst person to choose a name, but I would love to have it as something that's not just California based or like large rocks or I like the cats. I have to say I like the cats, but like something that is easier for me to remember would be lovely and something that was kind of global.
How about just a number?
That's so
I'm
boring,
voting for just a number.
like then it's like 23.
But you just said it was hard to remember. If like with iOS,
it is hard to remember.
iOS 13, if I said what was the version before, you would just go iOS 12. If I said what's the version next, you go iOS 12. Because you can count.
I'll say what I would like, and it's similar to what you're saying, Renee, so that I would be able to remember it. But I would love it if it was just the year. I like because then it places it within time. But that for me is really difficult. If you're
what about
like
cars the next year, so it doesn't seem outdated right after they announce it. Like
no, that's confusing.
I actually really like, I think that should be the same thing for the phones. I think that it should, like, I think it should all be the year of, because then when we go like, well, I want to buy the new iPad. No, really the old new iPad. That's not like that kills me. That is like a nightmare for me. But if you gave me like, I would have such an easier time doing the show if it was just do you remember 2012 version? I'm like, oh no, wait, I can place myself back to 2012 and what phone was your 2012 iPhone, the Pro version of that I could do, but all of these names and shifting them into place and time when I don't remember name.
Windows 2000.
Right. I like that.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think Windows 2000 came out in Windows in 2003 though.
It's not that bothers me. That bothers me. But it's not snazzy, it's not as fun, it's not as cute, but it works for me. And I think that eventually there's just too many names to remember. Are we on the cats? Are we on the mountains? Where
I would
are
do
we?
that, but I do the next year. Like I would announce in June what's coming for iOS in 2021, and I would call it iOS 2021, and then give them the whole year to ship it. Same with Mac OS. So that would take off the pressure.
That's kind of like the cars, though, right? Where the cars of this year are not like, so it doesn't seem like they're
because if you announce a car, in September or October, 2 months later, it's like it's last year's car.
Yeah,
but it is.
No, because it's only been this year for 2 months. It's been the other year for 10 months.
It's not the next year's car when it's this year's car either. It's a lie.
It's kind of like the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max are really kind of the 2020 iPhones, and the 12 and whatever we're going to get this fall are really the 2021 iPhones. That's where they're going to live most of their, where the new phones life, especially this year.
And to Renee's point, the rolling out features throughout the year, you know that's true. So for iOS 13, we got iOS 13 in September of last year, but then we got iOS 13.1, iOS 13.2, we're on iOS 13.5. That's been happening all year long, and it'll continue to happen until September again. Yeah. So I think, Renee, Georgia, on the one hand, I know what you mean because it's confusing to me. You have a 2020 car, but you bought it in 2019. That's confusing. I get that. But from what Renee is saying is like the year 2021, for example, will be the year that all of the updates for this software will be happening. So it does kind of make sense to like give it the following year's nomenclature.
But probably they're going to keep with the cute. I think that I might be on the minority of not liking the cute naming and the discussions that are on there. I think that a lot of people do enjoy the cute names that are out there with it. And I'm just like, oh God, I need to remember another name. And then I have to remember where it is. Like I'd have to actually study it or have like some sort of like cheat sheet that's up on the computer with me.
That's what they do, Georgia. Not only do they double down on names for macOS, they bring names to iOS.
Oh, no.
Yukon.
I'd actually like to see them go, leave the planet entirely and go into space.
Start naming stars.
Really cool,
iOS
though.
Jupiter.
I think that would be beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I think that would be beautiful. I think that'd be very cool.
macOS Kuiper Belt.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about this just now. If they got rid of the names and just went with, say, years, I think this year they'd stick with 2020 because they'd call it macOS 20, and the tagline would be something like, "We're taking macOS from 10 to 20." You know, that's something like
Hindsight
that.
is 2020.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking the same one, Renee.
It's macOS, and then it's the logo for 2020 that they had in the ABC program that they had in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
2020.
Bum, bum.
I like it. Ikashin, again, I still don't know how to pronounce your name properly, mentions macOS Avalon. So Avalon is the name of the city on Catalina Island. And I had also heard this kind of around the social medias. I think if Apple is going to give macOS a name, which they just have, and we keep talking about them like, well, maybe they'll change it this year. They don't. So Avalon to me implies a stability year, which is what Catalina needs. So calling it Avalon would be sort of the half step update, meaning
Neil
we're
Seibert
not
would
giving
become
you
impossible to deal with. He would be impossible to deal with because his website is Avalon. So I mean, if they can't do it just because of Neil.
I mean,
they're not gonna open their own website called Avalon. It's just macOS Avalon.
It's gonna be what is it? It's gonna be Apple.
I mean, there's an island called Catalina, and Catalina didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, there's categories like you can, But
it's like making
there's
iOS
the actual
daring
Space
Fireball.
Force and the show Space Force. They're two separate categories. They're not going to be actually having any.
No, it's like iOS daring Fireball. You cannot make impossible people even more impossible.
Well, you'd have to sue a Fireball.
I mean, I've said it before. Avalon's also the place in mythology where King Arthur was buried, and I don't know how to connect that to Apple yet, but I'm gonna.
There's gotta be
mythological beasts. I'm in.
Well, I think that's where Neil got the name from. I don't think he got it from Catalina.
Yeah.
He's in Connecticut.
Like
King
if I
Arthur's
go, let's make it after like unicorn, Pegasus, Hydra.
Can I ask a way out question? Even if we don't see any specific next generation hardware, will we see the beginnings of ROS this year, the reality operating system, or is it still too early? Like, will we see ROS on an iPhone or iPad?
I could see them tempting us with it. I don't think they would come out, but I could see them giving us a little taste.
Because the latest rumor from Gurman is that before we get the glasses, we're going to get the VR headset, and that originally it was supposed to be like a Oculus Rift with a Wi-Fi pack, but Johnny Ive said, no, we don't do external computers here at Apple. Make it internal. So now it's more like an Oculus Quest, like probably an aluminum Oculus Quest, with a high gaming.
I read that and got so frustrated.
But would we see, like, would they have to prep the game? Would they have to prep the games this early? Because Apple's not known for a gaming catalog. So would they start providing people with hooks to ROS style API so they could start making high quality games so that when they did announce this, it would have some content?
They do that though. Like they released Apple TV and there were like 2 shows. Like they do that. There's nothing there except for it. And they're like, if we build it, they will come.
Yeah. But
like
it would
FaceTime
definitely
AR.
It would definitely be something they would announce at WWDC because they want to prep developers for it. So the question is, will we see it this year so that between now and next June, developers have the ability to create games for something that Apple will then maybe announce in 2021 or actually release in 2021?
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing with the ARM transition. They're not just going to drop ARM hardware on everyone without getting developers prepped. He said, preparing to look like an idiot on Monday.
If they hear us say that, yes, they're going to, is there a greater chance? Because then I'm all in. They will. If they say at WW that if we say it on the show, then it probably will increase the chance. Okay, then they're definitely not going to do it.
Definitely not. They won't.
Definitely not. It's never happening.
I strongly believe that all of the heads at Apple are listening to our show every week and taking our suggestions and turning them into something. So
a whole bunch of my ideas, and I haven't gotten any, not even a thank you note.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about ARM. Joe, we've talked about this quite a few times, but because Monday is where we're going to find out whether or not Apple actually says anything about it. Like we are at the cusp of either yes, it's happening for sure this year, or maybe it's still not going to happen anytime soon. What do you think? So, being that this is a developer conference and app developers are going to have to prepare to transition to ARM, do you think we're going to see this? And how do you think Apple's going to present that? And, do you think that we're going to see a Mac later this year with ARM, or do you think they're going to give them a little more time?
Oh, so I think here's where I'm really putting my foot down. If Apple doesn't talk about it, if Apple doesn't talk about an ARM transition at WWDC this year, we're not getting ARM Macs until after WWDC next year.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so you don't think that Apple would just kind of like tell developers in some kind of developer update, like, oh,
no,
yeah.
I mean, they didn't do it with the last transition was 15 years ago, and they didn't do it then, and for very good reason. And they released developer hardware specific for the transition, like a year later, I think, or was it at that conference? I can't remember.
But I have a question for Joe. If I could sneak this in, will they even mention the word ARM? Because when they moved to PowerPC was a brand, and they had to mention it. When they moved to Intel was a brand. ARM is not a brand.
Yeah,
they don't go up and say, here's the iPhone with the new ARM chip. They just say A10.
Well,
so they come out and say, bye-bye Intel, we're moving to custom Apple X1 or M1 or
well, see, that's kind of the confusing thing about talking about ARM chips, because ARM very much is a brand and they do sell processors to people. But one of the other things they do, and this is what they do with Apple, for instance, is they license out their instruction set. So Apple's not using ARM processors and modifying them. What Apple is doing is they're building custom silicon using the instruction set to execute machine code that ARM provides. And that's what Apple's doing. So no, they probably won't call it ARM, and it's not going to be called an ARM transition. They will call it like the Apple custom processor transition, or the Apple chip transition, or something like that. It's going to be all about Apple, because that's what this ARM transition is. It is all about Apple, and it's all about Apple being able to control its own device roadmap up and down the stack. Because I mean, the Mac is the only major device category that Apple makes that doesn't run on Apple silicon. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's right.
So yeah, that's what this is going to be. So what I think is going to happen at WW is they're gonna announce it. They might announce some like a developer hardware, which is probably going to be some kind of desktop. I would imagine a version of the Mac Mini, actually, because I mean, the way I think about it, you're not going to want like battery life numbers out there in the wild for a test machine for an architecture that isn't fully ready, that they're still working on. So they're going to want something that can rely on consistent power, like a desktop. And then I think we could see the first ARM Mac this year. I mean, I think the Bloomberg report from weeks and weeks ago said they'll have ARM Macs by 2021, which makes me think an ARM Mac at the end of the year, maybe in December.
Which would also mean announcing it at WW.
But I mean, and yeah, that could very well be what that means. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see the first ARM Macs until March of next year.
Will they do that big moment they did in the last time though, and say like, oh, and by the way, all of these machines right here have been running the entire show on ARM the entire time?
That would be amazing. What would be especially amazing is if they had like the Xeon equivalent ARM processor ready, and they had a Mac Pro doing all this on an ARM Xeon analog the whole time.
And they could do that. They could do that this year, because they could potentially pre-record a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to worry about the fear of breaking things. Like they could have like part of it all running on an ARM Mac Pro or something like that, and say that was running on a Mac Pro, but they didn't have to, they could have pre-recorded it so they didn't have to worry about it breaking in demo. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Can we go through before we finish and find out what people are most, because I want to hear what Renee's most excited for or hopeful for before we end. I would love to just go through
Yeah.
it.
Oh wow, we're not out of time, but we're getting there, aren't we?
Talked a lot.
This has been a great hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let me talk to Renee first really quick about iOS 14. Not necessarily the details coming soon, but can we take a moment to mention John Prosser's tweet, his 2-word tweet, iPhone OS? What do you think? Do you think that's coming, or do you think that's not happening? I mean, John didn't say this is coming. He just literally just said 2 words. He could have just been being funny or something like that.
The internet went wild.
There
Yes,
was so
the
much
internet
leaker
went
drama
wild.
over like yesterday. I don't even want to get like too
Oh,
far
I
into
know.
it because it
I
was like
know.
everyone was just attacking everybody. It was
I know.
leaker drama palooza.
Everyone
And nobody.
wants
It's a
children.
feeding frenzy.
Yeah,
It was.
No, I think it's just like everyone's getting super territorial about it right now. They want to protect their little leakdoms. But I unless there's going to be other devices that run iOS, it makes sense to me because it was originally iPhone OS.
Right.
That's what it shipped as, and then it was iPhone OS awkwardly when the iPad ran it, and then with iOS 4 it became with iPhone OS 4 it became iOS 4, and now iPad OS has its own thing, and iPhone's like, but what happened? We were dating. I put you through medical school, and now you've graduated, and you're leaving me for a new name. It's so awkward. And so I think that if it's just going to be the iPhone, it makes much more sense to just call it iPhone OS than iOS because iOS implies multiple devices.
So do you think that means we're going to get iPod OS then? Or do you think that the iPod Touch will just now be called iPhone OS and it just has to deal with it?
Oh, that's right. There is an awkward other operating. Yeah, I don't know. Is that going to? Yeah, is it going to just go away?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that Apple's going to keep selling the iPod Touch because I think it's an entry point for young people to get into Apple Arcade and Apple Music. And it's a way for people who don't want to go all in on Apple to still have a very inexpensive way to use an Apple device. So
But
think
they won't
we're
mention
keeping
it, so
iPod
maybe
Touch.
it won't matter. Because there's no way they're going to mention the iPod Touch. They'll just
Yeah.
forget about it. People will still call it iOS, and they'll act like it doesn't exist. And it'll be I won't be ignored Apple and boil its rabbit in the corner somewhere, and everything will move on.
That's what I was thinking too, that I could see this moving to iPhone OS because it matches all of the other naming schemes right now, like tvOS, macOS, watchOS. But there's that one little thing of iPod Touch, but does Apple ever mention iPods ever except when they're updating one? No, they never
It's
talk
so
about
awkward.
it. They say iPhone and they say iPad. So I think that it could be renamed iPhone OS, and it's just iPod's just going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, Stephen Perry in the chat brings up maybe that's the new hardware. It's updated iPods. But what if they go one further? It's updated iPod classics. What if they bring back the classic? I wrote about this earlier this week. I want it. I do want it, but with AirPods compatibility.
Yeah. And so let's start with Georgia. What are you most excited for WWDC?
Well, I would love my Apple tags.
Yes. So
I'm really excited about Apple. And we've talked a little bit more about some other stuff, but if there was Apple tags, that would actually be so life-changing for me. It would really be I think it would be such a huge benefit. And I think that it's needed. So though I think that Rene and I talked on his show about the health fitness with the Wotc, and I think that would also be really wonderful and great, and I think that they could implement it. I believe that we'll be getting some pieces of that, but I think Apple tags are monumental, and I think that it would be just a little bit of a better world. I think they could be misused too, but I think that mostly they would be used for good.
You're going to LoJack your kids.
I will. I'm not going to lie. Yes, they will be.
She said used for good.
Yeah. They will be. The dog will be. The car will be. My purse will be. They'll be stuck on most things. I'll have them stuck on the AirPods because I still lose them. I'm supposed to be able to find them.
Have these.
Sorry.
These little.
Yeah. They'll be.
Well, I think they might be round. So
I'll glue them on. A hot glue gun will do magic.
They'll look like the Microsoft earbuds, but then they have the little
Right.
stick coming out of them.
Oh yeah, if they glow and they actually have like lights on them, then that would be on everything. It would be just an accessory. It'd be a necklace. It would be a belt. I would be, like the old times with the little tiny iPod Nanos. I'll go all out. I'll buy, a plethora.
Can I just
Is that what a group
call
of
attention to
AirPods
the
are called?
fact-
It's a plethora. There's probably a word for
Plethora.
them.
Yeah.
Like a group
bunch of them.
like a murder of crows. There has to be
Right.
a word for, a
AirTags.
worm of AirTags.
An annoyance of AirTags. There we go.
Can I just point out that Stephen Perry in the comments just said, I've made the joke before, but clearly Georgia wants Apple's first wearables spelled WHERE. Good one.
Good one. That is good. That is good.
Yeah,
and
that was
true.
pretty good.
You are right. You are right. I do.
How much is too much for you to pay for it? So they announce it, they say it's coming, you can order them now, they'll be here in 2 months or whatever. And then they say they come at what price?
Oh, I would spend, like, this would be like paying for the wheels. Like I would buy all four wheels. I would. They don't even have a stopper on them. Your stuff will just keep on rolling. I won't care. So I don't know. Like if it was even like, I don't think I would pay like $200 each. I think that might be too, like I'd buy a few. I probably still would buy a few.
Even at that
probably
price.
$200 I'd probably buy. And I don't see them spending that much because they're up against a whole bunch of other tags, right? So, but I would if they worked really well, like if this was this life-changing thing on the things that matter to you, what is the cost, right? So it would be like, stuck to my kid's watch or something, because I know that or hopefully that would be like the watch would be also used as a tag and I wouldn't have to worry about that. And it would be really good, right? Hopefully they stick it on every device. You don't have to stick the tag onto your phone as well, because it's already got the Find My Phone, but it would be
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, hopefully it would be around, you'd get a pack of them for, I'm hoping they're affordable. But
yeah, I don't think they're going to be as much as even $100. But I'm just wondering, is there a point at which
a little leather pouch, right? German said a little leather pouch.
That leather pouch
double the cost.
That'll cost you extra. That
$49.99. There we go. $49.99. That's what they'll charge.
So Joe,
would it be per AirPod? Like, would it be per
Set
one?
Of two.
Instead of two? Okay, that's not bad. $25 each. I'm in.
So here's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. Like one of Apple's bigger competitors in this space is Tile, and Tile sells for $25 per tag, or you can get a pack of 4 for $70.
Yeah, discounted the more you get. But so what that calls attention to me is that Apple always charges more for their products than other people. So if you can, on average, get another version of a tag that allows you to find things for around $25, wouldn't Apple charge something more like $40 or $35? Would they keep it within the range, or do you think they would up the cost of it because it's Apple? They have the branding.
It's what they do.
Yeah.
It would depend on what it comes with, right? Like it depends what it comes with and how successful, their competitors are, right? Apple TV was free because Apple kind of had to, right? You got to get a little bit addicted before you deal with it. So I think that it would depend on, do you get more features than not? Because this is a real like sideline, right? Like we use our watch. Most people have a watch, not everyone anymore, but it used to be a very common thing. Most people have a phone. Most people have a computer. Very few people are LoJacking their children and pets.
I have a guess. I have a guess. So it's going to be the same as AirPods, where Apple puts a bunch of technology in it that addresses everything but the main function of the device. So people listen to AirPods and they're like, these do not sound like $150 headphones. And Apple's like, yeah, but they've got a accelerometer, a motion sensor in it. They've got this, like all the like a custom ARM chipset in it, blah, blah, blah. And so these will be the same thing. It'll be like, these are outrageously expensive, and I'll be like, yeah, but it's got like a positional chipset in it, so you can find it in your house. It's got all this, and you'll be like, it looks like a quarter, and they'll be like, yeah, but we're actually selling it at cost, and you'll be like, but nobody asked you to put that stuff in it.
So it'll be like the watch where it functioned in a lot of great spaces, but it wasn't a great watch.
Well, no, this will be the opposite. It'll be great at what it is, but it'll have a bunch of stuff that makes it that way that you don't think is really important.
Yes, it looks like a quarter, but it costs about 150 times a quarter.
Yeah.
Joe, what are you most excited for DubDub?
iPad OS, hands down. iPad OS, maybe, you know, and I say this every year, maybe Siri as well, but you know, that's Charlie Brown in the football for me.
Georgia. Updates to Siri, make Siri better. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, I've given up on.
It's the eternal dream.
Siri. Yeah, I've given up on Siri. But she was yelling at us the other day. You know, like really.
My in all seriousness choice is iPad.
No, shots fired.
Yeah, iPad OS. I you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be there. I'm excited to try out any new keyboard stuff because I love using my Magic Keyboard. Come on, Apple, please trackpad gestures, please.
Yeah.
So and maybe some home screen updates to the iPhone finally for the first time.
That's like Georgia wanting better Siri.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's like asking for a better Siri. Is asking for home screen updates. That's what I want, this iPad. But you know, what see a commitment really to this new platform?
Yes, you're right. They were so successful with iPad OS, period, that I don't want to see them falter and put it off on the side. I want them to grow that. You're right. Yeah.
No more year-long gaps.
Yeah. Keep that momentum going. Keep improving iPad OS. Yeah. Renee, what about you? What are you looking forward to the most at DubDub? Besides Lori's having to
I was going to say survive. Lori understands that. Like, it's just survive. It's I feel like when you join media, it goes from being the kids at Christmas to being the parents at Christmas.
Yeah.
Because, and like, not the way that Apple is, but it's like, you have to make sure everything's ready, and then it goes, and then like, and everyone's like enjoying themselves, and you're still trying to monitor everything, and then you only get to enjoy it a week later.
True. I would ask Renee, what did you think of the keynote? What did you think of this? And he's like, I've been so busy writing the entire time. I haven't even been able to absorb anything, and I don't even know. Because you don't
store it. Like, it goes in your ears, and you type it out, and your brain is like, I'm busy typing what I'm hearing. I am not storing locally anything for you right now.
Not even listening to what's happening because you're just so busy just getting everything out there and that dash to it. And I'm like sitting back with like, you know, a drink, and we're like, whoa, did you hear that?
This is all streaming from the cloud. None of it's being downloaded.
No, and then there's also the threat of Georgia being angry at something and blaming me. And then the next time I talk to her, she's like, why did they do this?
Yeah, that is, I get my time. Then I go to Renee to rant whenever something breaks. I'm like, Renee, why did this happen?
Renee, do you think
my poor baboon heart?
Why did you do this, Renee?
My poor baboon heart.
Do you think this year's going to be easier or harder for you with your new position as an independent filmmaker, YouTuber, content creator?
So I don't think that'll change anything. I think it'll be, and I'm going to regret saying this the minute I say it. And I think, like, for everybody in media, in some ways, it's going to be easier just not being there.
Yeah.
Because the logistics of us having, several things, like the logistics of us having to move around so much takes time. But also, like, there are people there with very different agendas than us. Like, there are some people who just come in for the keynote, write their stories, and leave.
Yeah.
There are other people who just file stories. And then there's like Dalrymple going, you're going to be at the beer bash, aren't you? You're going to be at the beard bash, aren't you? And then like, are you going to be at the talk show? And Lori's like, but we've got to file our stories, but you're not coming to the talk show, right? What about dinner? Are you going to get coffee? And then there's like developers who are away from home, like kids at camp.
Yeah, like this is like the world's smallest violin. Like, all of these parties have to
like
it is really fun.
I'm like, oh, you poor thing. I feel no sympathy for you.
There's developers who are like kids away at camp for the first time, who are just at bars until 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I have to write this stuff.
You poor thing. You have to attend all these parties and write. I'm sorry, I'm going to say what people listening are saying.
She's not wrong, Renee. She's not wrong.
We'll have more time to work in this situation, and we don't have to travel. Like, I'm not going to be on an airplane twice
Mhm.
for 8 hours with you going to
Mhm.
the airport on either side of that. So we'll literally have more time to work and
Yeah.
less distractions take us away from work.
Less
So I think in that
partying.
way, well, it'll be less enjoyable, but it's gonna be easier, I think, to work. And I regret
Easier.
saying that immediately because it could still go horribly wrong. Like
Right.
I joked because like you go to these things and you think it's like a huge tech company, everything, and then the Wi-Fi goes down. AT&T's not working, Verizon's not working, you can't connect to the live blog, you can't
Yeah.
tweet. And I'm like, this will be the first year I'm doing a keynote with actual functional internet. And then all the replies are,
Yeah.
you idiot, what have you just
And
done?
you don't have to move, and you don't have to find a place with better sound, which will
Like
be
now the
which will
feed's
be
going to
nice.
go down and like we'll all be
I was gonna
screwed.
say
Like, I
that.
mean, who knows?
But that's okay, because then you don't end up with the FOMO because it's for everyone. And so you'd still be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, no one else is being able to write either.
Right.
You know.
Nobody else went to Beard Bash
Well, I
tonight.
think I'll be
so-
doing the same work. It'll just be that there's less overhead. There's less logistical
Uh-huh.
overhead to doing the work.
Uh-huh. I've already decided that I'm going to work from my bed so that it feels like I'm
Ooh.
sitting on the bed at the hotel, because that's what WWDC is for me. If I'm not out talking to people, having dinners, drinking coffee, having drinks, I know, poor
Yeah.
me. I'm
Poor
sitting in a
you,
hotel
Lori.
room,
All
so-
that partying and writing.
I know. So I'm going to make my room as hotel room like as possible so
Oh, I
that
like
I can at
that.
least like feel like I'm just cross-legged with my computer on my lap and pillows propped up behind me just to feel the
And you
the
can just
same-
Yeah, I
play the
usually-
party music in the background, so it sounds like there's this
Like I
bustle
can't
of
say it's
people
not
that are around
fun,
you.
but I barely sleep or eat for 2 days around the keynote.
It is
Renee's
true. It
horrible.
is
He
true.
doesn't
Yeah.
eat. He will just forget to have any amount of food. And I'm always like shoving like granola bars in his backpack or something, trying to like, don't forget to eat this. He's like, okay, and he doesn't eat it.
Like, okay, mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah, for sure.
No, Renee, I feel you on that on that one, forgetting to eat. It's like, oh no, it's 7:00. I didn't eat all day. Oh crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you still have to get, and like especially before, like in the elder days, it'd be like Kevin's like, is the video up yet? And I'm like, the show hasn't even ended yet. And then
Yeah.
Derek's like, Kevin's wondering where the video is. The show has not ended yet.
Yeah. Get off
What
my
about that?
back.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody to ask you, is the video up yet? This is going to
And
be
you
all
can do that for
I love
what you want when you want. I
Yeah.
don't think
love
it's going to be any different, though. I'll be honest. I think that, Renee, you are going to probably be like
more stressed.
still the same amount of stress, but now it'll be from
I'll
you.
have the amount of time that not having to walk around San Jose to go everywhere.
That is true.
Right.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Or
Renee,
hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Renee, if you want a hit of nostalgia, I can, periodically throughout the keynote just text you, where's the video? Is the video up yet?
Oh,
And if you message Joe, he actually answers. I'm just letting you know,
Yeah,
just in case you didn't know.
I keep my notifications on.
He's on, so he's going to be answering. Lori probably won't, but Joe will. So feel free.
Actually, what I really want to see this year at DubDub is I want Apple to bring back a phrase that they haven't used since they moved software previews to June instead of March. iPhone software roadmap.
yeah.
And I want them to actually show us a roadmap for the year. I know they won't because it would require too much transparency, but
it could
that's what I want.
it would be nice, and I think Renee, you've talked about this before. It would be nice for them to say, here are these big features coming, but not all at once in September. We will roll them out when we see fit.
A
And
more conservative fall release
mhm,
with some
right,
fun
right.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
got some fun headline stuff, but then the real meat comes in, November, December, February, March,
Yeah.
May, June.
Yeah, yeah. And that gives them the time they need to perfect it. And it gives, frankly, it makes software like a fun experience all year long instead of just one major thing. And then, like we just all unwrapped our Christmas presents and then we're like, okay, well, now what?
Young Min in the chat room said the same thing that I was hoping for, was like a one more thing
One more
moment
thing.
with something that like this candy excitement treat to give to us.
Right.
Is always exciting for me.
So
That's always my like, what? And I said, I'm
what
not
is it?
typing, so I'm like sitting up and I'm like, what is it? And I'm like freaking out and my eyes get all water. My eyes are getting watery just thinking that could happen.
Yeah, the one more thing that I like of the rumors that we're hearing right now that I want are AirTags or Apple Tags, the AirPods Studio or over-ear Studio, the ARM announcement of ARM coming, but also the new rumored iMac with a larger screen, smaller bezels,
Yeah,
and a new
that's hot.
iPad Pro design language. I don't know that this is going to be a reality. And Joe, you even mentioned that maybe that's just, if anything, it might even be a developer, ARM developer device, not something to the general public. But I would love a new iMac.
Yes, the war on bezels continues apace.
Mm-hmm.
I've never loved them.
You're sitting in front of one right now.
I never had a problem with them. But once I've started using screens that don't have them,
Right.
I'm really starting to go like, oh yeah, I can see how much nicer it is to not have that big black ring around my computer. It's a pleasant experience. I'm fine with it, but it is a pleasant experience when it's not there. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that goes back all the way to when Chad and I would have bezel fights of how you can't have less of a bezel. How would you hold the phone? And I'm like, you can hold it on the edge. You don't have to stick you don't have to wrap
your
your
small
claws.
my fingers are?
You don't have to wrap your claws around the phone. You can,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm with you.
Yep. All right. Well, we have come down to the end of the hour. This has been absolutely so much fun. I love it. I'm so excited about Monday. It's like a kid in a candy store. And I love that we get to take a moment and just talk about all the things we're excited about. So thank you, Rene, so much for joining us and being a guest on our show. I know that you are very busy with youtube.com/Rene Ritchie, where everyone can go to watch all of your wonderful videos about analysis, about things going on with app developers and what Apple thinks of it, reviews of hardware whenever Apple puts out some hardware. You talk about operating system changes that you would like to see, and once they're out, you talk about what it means. Anything anybody wants to know about Apple, Rene is there talking to you, helping you understand it, not from the perspective of just somebody who just says, I like this or I don't like this. Rene actually goes into deep analysis and uses the history of Apple and the history of finances and things like that to really like make it make sense for us. So don't forget to go to youtube.com/Rene Ritchie to sign up. Rene, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's always a delight. It feels like coming home.
And Joe Keller, that was really sweet. I almost cried. Joe Keller, if people want to find you on the social medias, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at jkeller87. That's JKELLER87.
Excellent. And Georgia, if people want to get in touch with you and talk about WWDC coming up next week with you, where can they find you?
So you can check out Twitter at Georgia_Dow. You can also send me an email. It's georgia@westmounttherapy.com. And if you're dealing with anxiety and depression, don't want to do like a therapeutic thing, you just want to do it at home on your own, you can check out Anxiety-Videos.
Excellent. And before I forget, iMore is going to be on Discord on Monday for the WW keynote. So anyone can join us. We will put a link in the show note to an invite to our Discord channel. We're all just going to sit around and hang out and talk about it. So it's the iMore writing staff will be there just being excited just like we are right now. So please join us on Discord on Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time for the keynote address. So thank you so much. Thanks for everybody that joined us today live. Bunch of people in there talking today, so it was really great to have you. Thanks to Jim Metzendorf for making us sound beautiful all the time. And thank you to all of our listeners that aren't able to listen live, but will be listening tomorrow or Sunday or sometimes next week. Thank you so much. We love having you listen to us blather on all the time. Have a great day. Goodbye. A good